Eric Vicenti, Sanket Sahu, my dear friend Sweta Tanwar, and the panel will be moderated by Subramanya Chakravarti. Where is Subramanya? Yeah. So, before they start, again, let's, bump up the energy because this panel is going to be really some deep dives, interesting discussions. So, let's give them a huge round of applause. Yeah, everyone. People at the back, everyone. Yes, let's give them a huge round of applause. Let's do it once again. मुझे सुनाई नहीं दे रहा है. थोड़ा शोर मचाओ. थोड़ा शोर मचाओ और. Yes.
Hi everyone. How are you guys doing? Ready for the coffee or the discussions? Okay, nice. Let's start. Let me introduce myself. I am Subramanya Chakravarti. I work at Blackbuck as a React Native developer. And I also want to know my panel members more, like what exactly they are much more into. So can you guys please tell more about your work and what kind of exciting stuff do you guys do? Sweta?
So hi, I'm Sweta. I work at Rippling, and I have been into React Native for some time now, and it has been like a very nice experience. One thing which I have faced in every conferences is that there will be very few React Native people when you compare to the React people. So it feels actually good when there are talks of React Native and the people are having discussions on React Native. So it actually feels great.
Yeah, it's exciting to see the React Native community growing a little bit more at every conference. Of course, the React community is super huge, but it's so exciting that we've got this whole world of mobile development that is available to all of the web developers who have been building with React. I'm Eric. I was on the React Native team long time ago, back before it was even called React Native, and I was on the React Native team when we open sourced it in 2015. And back then, no one was really owning this whole world of navigation, so I started to work on a few Navigator projects, including the Navigator that originally shipped with React Native, and that Navigator was really bad, and then it kind of made it my own responsibility to work on navigation for quite a few years. So I partnered with Expo and Facebook at the time. Now they're Meta. But I worked with across the two companies to create React Navigation, and yeah, I've just been involved with a few other open source projects, and I've been outside of the world of React Native for a little while now, but excited to get the Rise Playground app launched today, and yeah, would love to talk more about it.
Thank you. So hello everybody, I'm Mike, and yeah, I'm currently working with very good Rise tools and Rise Playground. I started doing React Native back in 2016. I think the way I started was I was writing iOS native apps, and then my boss wanted me to build Android, and after seeing all the Java documentation, I was like, there is no way I'm doing this, there has got to be a better way. And luckily, React Native just got open source, so that saved me. So we shipped to production, and we started having some issues, obviously, so I ended up fixing them myself, and that's how I joined the community. Then I was spending a lot of my time on the release process, helping with the releases, communication and issue management before we even had a thing such as React Native community. In the meantime, I also founded ColdStack, which is a sort of consultancy. We specialize in React and React Native. We've been running ever since 2016. After 8 years, I felt like, okay, I now have to get my hands dirty with coding again. And so now I'm just doing open source, looking for the next big thing. Hacking with Eric right now, like I said. And so, yeah, happy to be here on the panel. Exciting. There is the React Native dedicated track, because it's usually, React, and React Native is like that 1%. So that's very exciting.
All right, looks like we're talking about the bad days of React Native here. Okay, so that's when even I got into React Native. I think it was the day when it was announced for Android. And actually, we were waiting for it for a really long time. It was announced for iOS. And I remember there was a website which had a countdown timer, okay? Days until we have to wait for the Android release.
Oh,
Yes.
It was a thing.
Yeah, and I come from a web background, and that's what excited me about React Native a lot. And we got into it. So I run this company called Geeky Ants, and React Native was the thing that made Geeky Ants so popular because we got involved very early on, and there was no component library, and that's when we built Native Base, which has around 20,000 plus stars on GitHub today, and we are building the next version of the same thing. It's called GlueStack UI. And and it's very interesting how I met these guys at a conference in Poland. Sorry, not Poland. I think before that was Portland. We met at Chain React first. Yeah. So yeah, good old stories. Here to talk more about it.
Yeah, it's like we are mutually connected. It's just that you're operating out of here and I'm operating out of Poland. But like open source and consulting, it's like totally same story. It's fun.
Yep.
Okay, I also want to ask one question for you, Mike and Eric. So how is India treating you so far?
I mean, it's my first time in India. I mean, I haven't made it too far outside of the hotel. Where they've been taking incredible care of me here, but I love Indian food, so I've been having a blast speaking with all these people on this side of the world who I don't get to engage with as often. We see each other online, and a few years ago I did a React Native workshop for like an Indian audience, but it was online. The year was 2020, so this is way more fun.
Cool.
Yeah, I can only agree with what Eric said. To me, open source and communities is sort of what makes it all fun and enables a lot of exciting experiences. So out of Poland, thanks to open source and Twitter and all that stuff, I was able to travel around the world and meet a lot of great people like you. And so, yeah, like this is my second time here and I'm also enjoying it. And we do have a special assignment planned after this panel, which is we're going to chase some mangoes, right?
Yeah.
So this will be fun. But yeah, I've traveled across like world, visited many different countries thanks to conferences. And this is, as good as it gets. Like, it's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, let's start the questions. So my first question would be, what is that one thing that you guys are excited about the future of React Native? Let's say it can be server-ended components. Let's say it can be JSI, whatever it is.
Well, I'm excited about a lot of things, pretty much. Obviously, RISE tools, so server components. I've been very bullish on server-driven UIs ever since we started doing enterprise-scale apps at ColdStack. So that's one thing, and I'm excited that a lot of different people are approaching this problem from like different angles, and so Explorer is also coming along very nicely, and that's going to be super exciting. And I'm also quite excited about new architecture in a way that I know this topic's been around for a while, but when we used to have like I used to go to a lot of sales calls, and many times I would have this question like, where is React Native headed? Is React Native a safe bet? Like, why should I choose React Native? React Native has bad performance. And so many times we would have to say that, but there is this new architecture coming. Now that it's sort of rolling out, it's finally not even a question, and we can finally move on to do crazy other things like server components. So these are the things that I'm excited about.
Yeah, I think there's always a time in the journey of ecosystem that you feel, okay, now it's evolved and it's there. But looking at the React and React Native ecosystem, there's always a time that you think it's that phase, but there comes something, and then you're like, oh, wow. And and I think we are going through that phase of React and React Native again, be it React compiler or the React Native's RSC support that Evan Bacon talked about at AppJS conference. And React Native is more universal than ever. And there are big companies betting on this aspect of React Native that use it, write once and run everywhere, than learn once and write anywhere. If you look at React Strict DOM, for example, I'm pretty excited about that as well. That takes the web APIs and you can use the same learnings to build native mobile apps. So a lot of new things coming in. We are really excited.
It looks like we never reach 1.0.
Yeah, 1.0 is always just around the corner, you know? But no, I love to see the sort of maturity of the ecosystem, especially like you were saying with React Strict DOM, because it's really, we're getting that much closer to having compatibility, like real compatibility with web and mobile. And React Native is just going in more places than it ever has before. Like it's, you know, there's always been like React Native like TV OS, but finally like the desktop platforms are seriously starting to mature, which I think is so exciting because, you know, how much of our world is implemented in Electron, and you know, like React Native is really gonna like thrive on the desktop, and it's just a matter of like for all these like this ecosystem of libraries to mature to the point where they're like super stable and easy to use on desktop. But I'm so excited to see React Native like more fluidly going to all these places like web and desktop.
Yeah, Eric, now that you mentioned platforms, just one more thing came to my mind. I should have mentioned Vision OS, which is the thing that, you know, my team at Callstack is working on, so that's yet another platform to handle, but yeah.
Yeah, so like I would like to add on that. So I have like seen the journey of React Native coming from the place where like everything was quite buggy and the performance was like very bad, and everyone used to complain that why are you using React Native when you can achieve the very good performance in native apps. And then like the next year, React Native gets these Hermes engine, then it comes like the React compiler. So whatever you think that right now, this is the issue with React Native, within like 1 or 2 years, you'll get that thing already done in the React Native side. So yeah, I mean, the future is quite bright, I'll say, because everything, it has like a very large community support, and everyone is like working so hard to get all those things which you feel is having an issue to make it work.
Okay, nice. So now I want to talk about server components, or you can say server-driven components, server-rendered components, whatever you. There are multiple ways, basically. So if you see last few years, Next.js kind of set a place where there can be more improvement what React can do. And now it looks like the time for React Native where frameworks can come in, something like Rise, something what even has shown in the expo, or what Sanket has shown today. So what do you think about these React server components and its future for the next 2 or 3 years that is going to be?
Everyone's looking at me. Okay. No, I'm super excited about server-defined components, of course. I mean, we've been working on Rise, and I was having some conversations earlier today where we've been asking ourselves, like, why hasn't this been a thing? Like, this is such a common thing in the industry, and here we are just finally, like, making it easy in open source, and now it seems like when it rains, it pours. Like, it's all of a sudden happening for everyone. Like, everyone's trying to implement this at the same time. Like, we were already working on our on Rise tools when we realized Evan's been doing this inside of Expo Router for Expo, and it's really exciting to see like competitive approaches, because it's just quite clear that the community will win when there's so many different options and different approaches for doing things, whether or not it's something that's entirely like in user space, like with what we're doing with Rise tools, where you can kind of use little bits of server-defined rendering and you can have incremental adoption, or if you want more of like a holistic framework approach, which is, it looks like Evan's approach is with Expo Router. So it's exciting times.
Yeah, and you know, I think that what's exciting about React Native and server components specifically is that historically, you know, React and web apps usually had a server, right? So now that we have React server components, so React components from the server, and we have Next.js and soon Remix and other frameworks, all these use cases are sort of influenced by the fact that there has always been this server and client on the web. Now mobile is different, right? Because mobile is like sort of a client running detached, and there is this API, but not always. It's just a different mental model of structuring and building apps. And so React Server Components use cases are going to be different. That's why, for example, if you look at Rise tools, we don't really have use server, use client directives, or like crossing the boundaries, because there's different set of use cases that make sense for mobile that not necessarily are the primary focus for web developers. And I think the dynamic sort of reordering or A/B testing, it's something that is pretty common for like mobile apps, specifically super apps. And I had great discussions with a few of you earlier today, and you're kind of working on something like that. So I feel like these use cases are slightly different from web, and that's exciting because React Native is going to be just exploring a whole bunch of new use cases that are currently, I would say, maybe unoccupied.
Yeah. So one thing which is very good about React Server Components is like everyone likes to ship everything like fast. It's like you just want this thing, get it done. You want this thing. No one wants to get through the whole review cycle or like going through that phase where you're deploying those changes. With the React Server Components, at least you can get those changes on the fly, that whatever it is, you have the support of it, and your UI will get updated with that particular change. Your DOM will get updated. So if anything like that, which can help us ship things faster and help us like escape that review cycle phase or just deploying phase, then that is something which actually is going to help a lot of organizations, because that will increase our productivity, because you don't have to go through all of those things. Just change that, get it deployed on the server, change it on the server, and get that updated value from it.
Yeah, I think I agree with all of you. I don't have, I think, server is an important piece, and if we can do what you just said, like without going through the whole process of deployment, if you can render it, I think that's one of the key aspects of like why people are doing SDUI. So yeah, and I agree. I mean, the Rise tools approach versus Evans approach or RSC approach, I think you guys have an edge when it comes to incremental adoption. I like that approach, but let's see. I think we are at a point where we need to unify our efforts as well, probably have a common spec that works for everyone. Competition is good for sure, but having a common ground would also help the community more, I guess, yeah.
But also, your approach is also very interesting, and I'm not saying that just to be nice, but honestly, like when I first saw your talk being right after us, I was like, are we gonna literally speak about the same thing, and like, is it even going to be a good thing? But then, sort of the way you approach the problem with like this sort of UI renderer and scanning the input-output is like, that's what I'm talking about in terms of like different mental model, because it's pretty interesting how we can generate entirely dynamic experiences, and I can see this being pretty useful, maybe even more useful than like traditional RSCs for like collecting input. So yeah, we'll see, but that's also very exciting.
Okay, nice. So let's say one of the biggest problems developers face is styling stuff or creating their own design components. And that's where I think Native Base has stepped in when there is a need for React Native. And now when there is a need for universal components, there is a glue stack. So can you tell us how do you make design systems at scale?
I think those are two different questions. But yeah, universal components, we are working on the second version of GlueStack, which uses native wind, which is the Tailwind counterpart of React Native. So essentially, you can share more styling with the same way how you style web apps using class name approach. And I think what everyone is trying to do is unify the API, and even the styling is now unified. And the way we saw how shared CN, for example, became mainstream and it got adopted by Vercel and Next.js, and people are just using shared CN UI for everything. We know that copy-paste works, and that's why we are also going with the same approach. I think that's the first part of the question. The second part, like how do we build design systems that scale? I think it's a very subjective thing. Yeah, the answer is very subjective to the type of company that you are in and what sort of design system you are trying to build. So, yeah.
Okay, fine. Cool. Yeah. So now I have the most burning question. How do you optimize the flat list? I think every developer here wants to know about it. Anyone?
I thought it was already optimized. I was actually surprised we have this question on the panel, so I'm curious to learn more about it.
I'm totally good.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, there's Shopify's flash list, which is like super easy to use, and then, or maybe it's incredibly fast, and then maybe it doesn't have the. Actually, I'm not sure which has the nicest API, but I think it's either Flashlist or one of the other ones that has a really similar API to Flatlist. Yeah, so it is Flashlist that offers, so Flashlist is on top of a different library that is extremely performant but has a not super ideal API. But Flashlist is a beautiful API, yeah.
Okay, fine. Okay, cool. So let's talk about testing for some time. So what do you guys think, like how crucial is it to test the whole application, or should we make only for unit tests, or what are your opinions on this?
Yeah, I think Mike had to add something on the last topic if he wants to continue on the design system one.
Thank you. Not really. Thank you for that. I guess I just wanted to say that, design systems are generally tricky, and I've been so happy like building with Tamagui, which is like cross-platform and universal. It takes time to set up, but that's because this is just hard. And we've done React Native paper as well in the past, and you work on the UI kits and design systems. It's hard. So yeah, that's pretty much my out of context answer. But yeah.
Do you want to go to the next one? I think the
Yeah.
testing
Let's
related
talk
question.
about the testing.
Yeah, Sweta.
Yeah, I feel testing is very crucial when it comes to applications, especially mobile applications where the user interacting does want a very smooth experience. Everything should be done like within just a click, just a tap. The gesture should be smooth enough. And when your customer base is using a mobile, and like everyone has a mobile today, even like I don't think so there's anyone who doesn't have a good mobile. So when everything is on mobile, you need to sustain, you need to retain those people. And by adding testing, you can be sure of that whatever feature you are shipping, at least that is prone to be like a good feature, it's going to be a success, and it won't be having the problems which might come. So I can share my experience. So recently we shipped a feature, and we were like lucky enough, we had like test cases added onto it. And when like the CI ran, we found that, oh, this test case is failing. And like we were able to like inform the respective team and get it fixed. So I feel if those test cases won't have been there, we would have to like do an immediate hot fix just to make sure that a lot of people are not impacted.
Any other views?
We did say during our talk that tests are not important, right? But I think we have to revert that back and say that yes, they are. I agree.
I recently came across a nice library, which is a testing library on top of, and it uses Gen AI. So it takes the screenshot and tries to identify the things on the screen as an end user and then automates the whole process. I forgot the name of that tool, but yeah. No, it's an AI-based tool.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty interesting.
We need that.
I forgot the name. I can't recollect, but yeah.
Okay. So my next question would be, since React is kind of saying use the framework, something like Next.js, and React Native is following the path of saying use Expo, and also if you see Microsoft has been sunsetting code push. So what do you guys think about Expo, and what is the take on it? Like, should we moving to Expo and using their services, or like, is it just still good to be with React Native?
So this is a multi-surface question, so I'll try to answer part of it. So historically, Expo used to be a very sort of enclosed system, but now that the infrastructure of Expo itself has been adapting, it's now very easy to use it, and it's no longer everything or nothing approach. It's a gradual adaptation, and I quite appreciate and like how React Native team specifically did introduce Expo to the game. They did communicate it very clearly through the React Native frameworks approach. What is Expo, and like frameworks like Expo R, what's their place in the community? And I think there is potentially going to be new frameworks coming up now that this is a public space, a public spec. I am aware of some developments in this space as well, without spoilers, but this is very exciting. And now regarding Microsoft sunsetting App Center, I think got sunsetted, and Code Push now I didn't know about it, but it's good to know. Microsoft has this RNX kit repo where they put all those great tools they have. And all I can say is that if anybody has doubts about like Microsoft tooling, just pay close attention to all the branches that there are and commits, because there's some cool stuff being created there that is going to fill in this gap after those tools were sunsetted.
I mean, what I love about Expo is that you can opt in however much you're interested in. Like if you want to use it to build your application, great. But if you don't want to use it to build your application, you can use this like big ecosystem of open source components, just the components that you need for your application, and you can worry about building it yourself. And it's actually the same with Expo's EAS update workflow. I'm like 95% sure they have published like their spec for how EAS update, like the open source client side, how it communicates with the server. So if you want to potentially implement your own server that publishes new bundles without having to use Expo's services, you can do that, and they did that. That's a very enterprise-friendly service, but I think what that really means is that you can start to use EAS update without having to worry about the future, because you know that you can just implement your own server if you need to, or you can come up with like if it gets expensive for you, you can come up with a special deal with Expo. So I think that like because you can opt into Expo in very specific pieces, it's like an incredibly healthy thing for the React Native community. And now that the React Native team is like endorsing it, but also saying, hey, it's not the only thing that we're going to endorse in the future. There's room for competition. It's pretty beautiful that there's that this is like clearly right now the best way, and maybe even like the only good way of building a React Native app from scratch. But there's still a bright future and a lot of different options even inside of the Expo framework.
Yeah, I think there are two parts. One is that you touched upon, so technology and business. I mean, on the technology part, I really love any promotions or any push that comes from the open source community towards these services. For example, Expo EAS or Vercels deployment, for example. So when we talk to enterprises, this becomes a big no-no because they don't want to have lock-ins, as you said. And Expo having those spec open out in the documentation, it makes a lot of sense for our customers to buy into Expo, and having that on the documentation as well, like React's documentations recommending Next.js, React Native recommending Expo. It also makes our jobs easier to convince our customers, much easier, because earlier we had to throw in some 5 different articles from different sources. Okay, this is what it is. But yeah, now it's easier. But yeah, definitely if we don't have the lock-in, it's a very good way of moving forward towards meta frameworks.
But yeah, I feel that with App Center being for so long in this community, a lot of people, a lot of companies had it like embedded into their systems so deeply that when it suddenly came that, okay, now it's sunsetting, so you had to look out for the alternatives. And the only alternative which is at par with App Center was just Expo. So I feel there is a lot of space where companies or like people can think of making something similar to like this service, so that a healthy competition is very good. Because right now, apart from Expo, there is no better option which can be used or utilized.
Yeah, that's right. And by the way, this is a very valid point with lock-in. And obviously, Expo is open source, and people often say that it's open source, so there is no lock-in, which is partially true, but also there is this aspect of like maintenance. And if it like Expo surface area is quite large, like I would not be able to get up to speed maintaining it if I had to in like quick time. So it's obviously a valid concern, and hopefully that move from React Native community where Expo becomes sort of, it's no longer just a single framework. There is like Expo modules and other things. So it's like this is making it easier, like you said, to sort of promote it to companies that are like cautious about their maintenance. When we say, hey, listen, like this is the part you can use, and it's okay because we can always replace it or like whatever, because it's just very small.
Okay, so this is a very normal question. Like, what is the most underrated library that you guys have recently used?
Rise.
If that's the thing, GlueStack UI.
Okay, I also want to talk about this one thing. So, any suggestions that you would like to give for the new React Native developers who are stepping their feet into the waters of React Native?
What was the question? Last I didn't get the last
Stepping
one.
into the waters of React Native, like any good suggestions for the new developers who are entering React Native ecosystem?
I don't have any, maybe, yeah.
I didn't get the beginning of the question. I'm sorry.
So I'm just asking any good suggestions that you guys can give for the new React Native developers.
Suggestions.
Suggestions.
Like how to become.
Advice. General advice.
Well, that's a good question. That's a good question because I'm biased, right? Because I've been doing this for so long that I almost forgot what it was like when React Native, like when I didn't know anything, because React Native was very small back then, and now it's like. All I can say is that I feel for you if you're struggling, because I was thinking about like all the good things we have today and like the amount of hours it takes to master them. And it's like I'm so lucky to kind of gradually learn them for the past 8 years. But now if I started, that would be very tricky. But I guess my only advice that is super universal is that the fastest way to learn anything is just get building, not reading, not watching. Just get with building as soon as you can. That's how I start. That's how I learned Web3. That's how I finally understood what blockchain was. Don't ask me now, by the way, but I had a good time last year. So that would be my advice.
I mean, go to expo.new, and you're going to be up and running with mobile development in like 5 minutes. You're gonna have a good time with it. I promise. And the other thing that's pretty new for new developers that everyone should be taking full advantage of is ChatGPT or Claude, or use the LLMs, because React Native has been around for long enough that they're all fully trained up on it. So it might be faster than going to the docs. Just like go ask your questions to the AI, and you're going to be learning faster than the whole previous generation of developers. So.
And in fact, I can only say that this is 100% true because half of the types in Rise were actually ChatGPT co-authored. So it's a living example that it actually is a very super helpful tool.
Yeah, absolutely. Like rather than like going through all the courses, learning from like YouTube videos, going through the documentations, just think of what you want to build it. Like what problem you are stuck on it, just ask ChatGPT or like then search for that problem, but start doing it. Just get your hands dirty on the code. That's the only way like you can get started.
Yeah, building is the fastest way to learn. Yeah, and ChatGPT is like steroids. I feel so jealous. We struggled so bad back in the days, and now they can just ask a question and it writes like most of the code. I did a landing page last week, just a side project. 95%, more than 95% of the code was written by Claude. So I think expo.new is also a good example. Go ahead and just run the playground and start building things. Yeah.
That's a great advice. So I would suggest start using LLMs, ChatGPT, that makes you more productive. Now I want to become like an interviewer for you guys. So this question is, what was the biggest challenge that you guys have faced recently, and can you guys share some insights on it? Like how did you solve, or any more takeaways from it?
So the first one that comes up to my mind is when we started working on Rise with Eric. We sort of had to create this whole library, and historically I've been mostly working on either applications or CLIs and tooling like auto linking. So getting my hands dirty with React Core, renderer, all those things turned out to be very challenging. Specifically, making JSX that you've seen on the demo be a thing was new. But yeah, how did I solve this challenge? I guess it was part of the question. I have Eric, so that's easy. We just did a lot of hacking on it, but it was quite a challenge, and I'm definitely happy that we made it through.
Nice.
I mean, find people to work with. That's probably one of my biggest pieces of advice if you're trying to do something challenging, something big. Because I was working on Rise, and earlier on it was called React Native Templates, and boy, it was really rough. It started to move a lot faster when I got Mike coming in and sending all these pull requests, and he was kind enough to like break it down into very specific pull requests so we could have really like in-depth conversations about the API design. And it has just come along so far since then. Like I was writing these server components like literally with big JSON payloads, and we've reinvented the library several times over the past month, and I wouldn't have had the energy to do that if not for working with somebody on this. So
Thank you.
glad we've been working together, and it's come a long way because it's been two of us working on it. So.
I can just add one more thing to this, that another challenge actually that I think I can disclose is, you know, when you team up with somebody, it's always a challenge because there's two people you have to kind of figure out, get to some compromises. And so me and Eric were like from totally different continents, and we have like different, like everything is different about us. Yet still, you know, we had some tough discussions, and we managed to overcome this, and I think it's now that the collaboration is stronger than ever. So I think technical challenges is one thing, but what makes me most excited is just the fact that we can get things done with somebody, and we just know each other from Twitter and GitHub, and still we can have a very nice discussion. So yeah, that's cool.
Good to know. Yeah. Talking about technical challenges that I recently faced, geekyans.com was written in the older version of React and Next.js. Geekyans, no, not PHP. So we used client components. I mean, it was not React Server components. And when we moved to React Server components, we got a huge bump in the Lighthouse and score because it's a long landing page with like more than 5,000 elements in there. And as we moved to RSCs, everything was just super fast. But there were few instances which had to be client components, like drop down or some animation. And we did not make those client component because we wanted to stay away from React. And we used an anti-pattern there. So we injected like custom JavaScript and gave them IDs, and then used like document.getElement by ID and all those things, and then animated those outside of React because we didn't want them to be shipped as React components. So it was not React, and it was an anti-pattern, but it made our Lighthouse score went even higher. So yeah.
The good old JavaScript to the rescue. Sweta, do you have any?
So one of the recent challenge which I faced was, so we were working on the application, and we found that in one of our product, we were having like very slow rendering of our product page. So finding exactly the bottleneck and the root cause of it was a bit challenging because everything looked very fine if you just see the code. That, okay, this is fine, the proper components are being used, everything is good. But like when we use profilers and found that no, there is some sort of frame drop over here, there's some sort of issue over there. So finding that particular cause and then fixing that, that was something which was challenging. Because at front, you will see that, okay, there's nothing wrong with it.
Cool. I guess that's pretty much from my side. So I really want to thank everyone here because it's such a great opportunity for me to be a moderator for you guys and share some good insights about React Native to the attendees. So yeah, thanks everyone.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
It's the last assignment today, so we can finally enjoy the conference, right? Talk is done, panel is done, let's go.